Wired versus wireless. This one in particular isn't a ton of money, but this mic, if we bought it brand new, would be about $150. This one with the receiver is probably, when it was new, it was about $800. Which one do you think sounds better? The wired one. You don't buy the wireless mic because it's a better microphone. You're buying it so that it's wireless. So you're going to sacrifice a little bit of quality in some cases. They're getting a lot better. Like most of them now are digital, so it doesn't need to use, these things used to use something called a compander. It would compress and expand on its way in and out. And so a lot of guitarists didn't like having wireless guitar because it was affecting their tone, because it was sort of squashing it and then opening it back up again. The newer ones now, because they're digital, it's converting it in the microphone and then sending ones and zeros. So it doesn't have to worry about over broadcasting, because it's not like a frequency modulated type of system. But they do add some complexity. So you have power requirements, you need batteries, you need to figure out what wireless frequencies are available. We live in a very small town, so pretty much anything in UHF is open. But if you go to LA, New York, those places, they're like fighting for slivers of channel space, because there's so much. Like our biggest thing that you're fighting with wireless mics is cable channels. When they're fired over the air, they're in the same frequency range, the 400 to 600 megahertz range. Interference, and then independent volume gain settings. So with a wired mic, I have one gain setting. Where it gets plugged in, I'm setting the gain. The wireless mic, there's generally a sensitivity setting in the microphone, there's a gain stage in the receiver, and then it's going into my system and I have another gain stage. So you have to sort of find it. You could be clipping the microphone before it even goes into your sound system where it isn't clipping. So if you're getting some weird sounds, I would check to make sure that you're not overdriving the receiver itself. And you might have to turn the volume down in there. Yeah, so if you have one or two wireless systems, you shouldn't have too many problems. They can just sort of exist and they'll be okay. But when you start getting a bunch of them, they create their own interference. It's called intermodulation interference. When you have all these antennas near each other, they just create phantom noise on different channels, and so you have to sort of work around that. But as you move other frequencies, those will just move. They add together in different harmonics. Yeah, local TV. I would generally put singers and instruments in one band together and then put IEMs in a completely different one, because on stage we have our wireless mics, receivers are over there, our in-ears transmitters are over there, but they're doing opposite things. That thing's firing out RF, that thing's receiving RF. So I have them as far away from each other as I can so that they don't talk to each other as much as possible. So yeah, so generally when you buy these systems, you can't, if you're buying in UHF right now, they just made stuff over 600 megahertz illegal to use. That's where 5G for cell phones is going. So if you're buying in UHF, it's between 470-ish to 600 that you can buy. But usually each system, they'll have like they'll say like J1 or M4. That's their coding for what frequency bands it's covering. So my microphone systems are in the higher 500s, and my wireless in-ear systems are in the 400s to low 500s. So they don't overlap at all. Yeah, I would try to buy all your wireless mics sort of in general one sort of frequency range, and then if you have wireless in-ears, try to have them in a completely different range so that they aren't overlapping with each other. So yeah, I was getting into like, once you have too many wireless receivers, that's where you get your intermod interference. So one of the ways to deal with this is like only make what you need to be wireless. So that need is dependent on you and your use case. So for a bunch of churches, they went wireless because they wanted to clean up all the wires in the front. That's fine. Just realize that it's going to cost more money and it's going to be more work. There's way less chance of something going wrong with a wire plugged into a microphone. But once you get into multiple systems, you generally want to get into antenna distribution or a combiner. So on our, can you turn on the band lights? We'll just light up the stage here for a second. It's kind of hard to see because I have all this stuff in the way. There's our wireless mics, and above it, you see the two antennas. That's an antenna distribution. So there's 8 ports on the back of that, and 2 from each receiver is going into that, and then it's combining all of that to just 2 antennas. So it's doing all the sort of addition inside instead of having 8 antennas there. And on this side, whoops, I have our 4 wireless receivers, and that goes into an antenna combiner. So there's 4 inputs on the back. All the antenna outs from those transmitters are going into that, and then it's just 1 antenna. And that'll help. That gets rid of your inner mod because it's just 1 antenna. It's just picking up for all of it, and then it's separating it out to each of them. All right, you can go back to the normal lights. Sorry, I saw, just as you got comfortable in your chair on the other side of the booth. This is a program called Wireless Workbench 6. It's from Shure. It's free. This is how you would coordinate your wireless. So once you get into a bunch of wireless mics, you can't. It's not as useful to just go, find a frequency and you're good. You'll end up probably needing more frequencies than you'll find in one group. So with this program, if you have a scanner, you can scan your RF environment, input that as data, as like your background noise, and then you'll tell it what microphones you have and what frequencies they work on, and then it'll coordinate them and tell you, put this mic on this channel, this mic on this channel, and that is calculating all of the inner mods so that they're not overlapping with each other. So it's doing all of the math because it's getting into like first, second, and third harmonic issues. So once you figure out how it works, it's actually pretty easy. Just basically tell it what you have or how many mics you have, and then it'll tell you what frequency to run them on. And you can even ask for backup frequencies. So if you have 4 mics, you can ask for 6 frequencies. So if suddenly one of them stops working, you just jump to the 5th frequency, and it will still work mathematically with the other ones that are there. It depends. So if you have a higher end Shure wireless system, it actually just connects over the network and it does the scan through itself. That would be like QLXD or ULXD or Axient, but that's like $1,500, $2,000, and then $6,000 per channel for those ones. Yeah. The lower end ones, they can't do that. So you can, I have one, it's called an RF Explorer, and it's just basically a little box with an antenna, and it'll read the room. You can plug it into your computer and use some software, and it'll save that, and you can just put that in. And then not only will it do the math, but it'll also avoid interference that you've picked up in your room. One way around that, if you don't have one, is it actually has all the TV channels for regions. So you'd put in your postal code, and it can find out what TV channels are transmitting, and it'll avoid those ones. So that's the sort of cheater way. If not, you can scan your room or find someone to scan your room. This one is a Wireless Workbench. And yeah, it's a free download from Shure. And it has a whole bunch of brands in there, so you can tell it, oh, I have this Sennheiser system and this many of this mic and this many of the in-ears, and it'll coordinate all of those for you.